He is Luo Feng's master. He runs Chaos City. He is one of the two most powerful humans alive for most of the story. But understanding that he is important and understanding what his breakthrough to true God actually cost him and what it meant when it finally happened are two completely different things. He was a strong cultivator who deliberately stunted his own growth for eras, who split his soul and his divine power across 3 separate bodies and carried that fracture as the price of keeping the human race alive. His breakthrough was not just a power upgrade, it was the moment a debt that the entire human race owed him finally started to be repaid. To understand how significant the breakthrough is, you first need to understand what he was doing while he was not breaking through. Most universe masters at his level could focus entirely on their own cultivation. Every ounce of divine power directed inward. Every moment of comprehension spent on the law path that would eventually unlock the true God tier. That focused singularity of purpose is how the breakthrough happens for most beings at this level. The Primal Chaos City Leader could not afford that, because humanity did not have enough peak tier protectors to cover everything that needed covering. So he split. His primary body stayed permanently in Primal Chaos City, the sacred training ground for humanity's most talented cultivators. The place where geniuses like Luo Feng receive foundational guidance and where the structural stability of human civilization's most important sanctuary was maintained. Without a being of his caliber anchoring that space, the training ground and everything it represented for humanity's future was at risk. His battle body roamed the universe ocean, fighting rival races, securing rare treasures, projecting human military capability into spaces where rivals were constantly probing for weaknesses, making sure other civilizations understood that attacking the human race meant facing real consequences. His virtual universe body sat permanently inside the virtual universe network, maintaining the system that connected human warriors across galaxies. The infrastructure that Teacher Origin had built, and that, after Teacher Origin's suppression, had no one else capable of sustaining it at that level. 3 bodies, 3 completely separate missions, all running simultaneously across light years of distance. The mental and spiritual toll of this is genuinely hard to conceptualize. While every other being at his tier was directing their full consciousness toward their own development, he was directing his fractured consciousness toward the survival of a civilization. His power was divided. His comprehension was interrupted constantly by the demands of 3 simultaneous responsibilities. His personal evolution was effectively frozen by necessity. For millions of years, the Primal Chaos City Leader sat one step below the true God tier, not because he lacked the capability to cross it, but because crossing it required a kind of focused inward attention that his responsibilities to humanity made impossible. He was the most stable thing the human race had, and stability for everyone else meant stagnation for him. Then Luo Feng's trajectory changed the calculation. The Duan Dong River inheritance that Luo Feng claimed gave him insights into ancient law comprehension paths that no currently living human possessed. He passed relevant portions of this to his teacher. The Duan Dong River lineage contained comprehension frameworks that could specifically help a being at the peak of universe master cross the threshold to true God through the law path. And beyond the direct inheritance insights, Luo Feng's rise generally shifted the structural pressure on humanity. He was not a replacement for the Primal Chaos City Leader. He was not at that tier yet. But his presence meant humanity's defense capability had a new serious element that had not existed before. The weight that had been concentrated entirely on the Primal Chaos City Leader and the Huge Axe creator was, for the first time, beginning to be distributed. That redistribution created the window. The rare moment when the Primal Chaos City Leader could look inward without leaving humanity catastrophically exposed. He chose the law path. The path that the vast majority of true gods use, pushing comprehension of the original laws to the depth required for the God country to transform into a miniature universe. Slower than the divine power path in some respects, more certain in others. And then, the breakthrough happened. The 3 bodies, the scholar, the warrior, the administrator, had to come back together. Those 3 separate forms that had been running as distinct entities, carrying their own missions and their own portions of his divided soul, were pulled back into unity. The fractured soul violently merged. 3 streams of consciousness that had been operating independently for millions of years became one again. For a being who had been split for that long, the reunion itself was traumatic in the way that healing a long broken bone is traumatic. The fractures knitting closed, the separate paths of experience converging into a single integrated understanding. Then, the God Country transformation. His God country had spanned light years during his universe master existence, the accumulated divine power and law authority of a being who had been at the absolute ceiling of his tier for eons. The boundary between that space and the original universe shattered. It detached, compressed, evolved. stopped being a god country inside the original universe, and became a miniature universe existing independently in the universe ocean. 100 million light years in diameter. Its own space, its own time, its own physics derived from his law comprehension. An entire universe that he carried within himself. At the center of that newly born universe, his core condensed into the true God's heart, the crystalline nucleus that stores the soul and connects to the miniature universe in the way we discussed in the True God Breakdown video. And then the physical manifestation, his divine body expanding past every restriction that universe masterhood had imposed on it, growing to a true God form standing 90,000 kilometers tall. Inside his new miniature universe, the 10 basic laws of the cosmos and the complex fusion laws spun out of the primordial chaos automatically. The universe organized itself around his comprehension, an ecosystem of absolute authority that he now carried with him wherever he moved. Now, what this actually meant for the human race, because the political and strategic consequences were felt immediately across the universe ocean. The most fundamental change was this. For millions of years, the human race had one true God, huge axe creator, one being who could exercise true God level deterrence against the rival civilizations that were constantly calculating whether humanity could be overwhelmed. The races that had been quietly running calculations on when it would be safe to seriously challenge humanity had to reset those calculations entirely. Beyond deterrence, his liberation from the three-body arrangement meant his peak combat power could be deployed anywhere in the universe ocean without leaving Chaos City or the virtual universe defenseless. He was no longer a fixed resource distributed across multiple critical locations. He was a mobile apex force that could respond to whatever crisis demanded his presence. And with the Duan Dong River inheritance techniques that Luo Feng had provided, him techniques built on ancient comprehension frameworks, he did not plateau at a basic true God level. He scaled. He worked his way up the true God tiers using those frameworks as the foundation, eventually reaching techniques capable of suppressing stage 2 sector beasts, the entities that represented an existential threat to the entire original universe, the things that could devour miniature universes. He was able to fight them. The arc of the Primal Chaos City Leader's story does not stop at true God. The foundation he built across millions of years of divided cultivation, all that comprehension developed while simultaneously managing 3 separate bodies worth of experience, gave him a depth of understanding that many beings who had cultivated with undivided focus could not match. When he finally had his full self back and could direct that entire reservoir of accumulated understanding toward forward progress, he moved faster than his previous rate of advancement would have suggested. He eventually broke through to Void True God, then to Eternal True God upon reaching the continent of origin. From a being who had deliberately frozen his own growth for eras, who had split himself across 3 separate lives to serve as the structural backbone of his civilization, who had watched beings with half his foundation and a fraction of his dedication advance past him simply because they had the luxury of focusing on themselves, to an eternal true God, permanent, unending. Carrying an indestructible holy land that could shelter his civilization across reincarnation cycles that erased everything else, there is a version of the Primal Chaos City Leader's story that is just about power. The numbers, the tier progression, the tactical implications of humanity gaining a second true God. But the version that actually matters is about what the breakthrough represented for a being who had made the calculation that his civilization's survival was worth more than his own advancement for as long as necessary. He did not resent that calculation. He made it clearly, maintained it for millions of years, and kept everything together until the moment arrived when it was finally possible to serve himself and serve humanity at the same time. Luo Feng's rise created that moment. Not by replacing what the Primal Chaos City Leader was doing, by becoming capable enough that the weight could shift enough to give his master room to breathe. And in that room, finally, after everything the fracture healed, the 3 became one. The Universe Master, who had been held in place by devotion, became the true God whose liberation was itself a gift to the race he had spent eras protecting. The student's growth, giving the Master the chance to grow, the inheritance working in both directions. That is the breakthrough of the Primal Chaos City Leader, not just the power upgrade. An earned release from a sacrifice that had been carried silently for longer than most civilizations exist. If you're enjoying this video, you can subscribe for more. Drop it in the comments. Do you think the Primal Chaos City Leader's sacrifice for the human race is comparable to what Teacher Origin did? Or do you think they represent different kinds of devotion? Because I think that comparison says something interesting about what leadership actually means in this story.